Hi, everyone. I'm Allison DeJager with Bliss Self Storage. For those of you who don't know, we are a platform for buying and selling self storage facilities. Today, we're going to be discussing different trends in the boat and RV storage industry. I just wanted to check in. We got Greg, Terry, and Amy. Can you just go around and tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and your experience in the industry? Greg, can you start us off?
Absolutely. So I'm Greg Ellsworth. Appreciate your time today, Allison. It's great to be here. Self-Storage Consulting Group, which I started in 2010, we specialize in third-party management, managing properties across the United States. We also have architectural division as well as general contracting. And we've been building, developing, managing various types of self-storage, but specifically boat and RV storage for the last 13 years. And focusing on how to develop those efficiently, keeping costs low, as well as maximizing our ability to absorb into a market by building based on data that we're able to collect prior to development, building the right unit mix, and hitting the ground with the highest rental rates possible so that we can deliver the best NOI at the end of the day.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us. Terry, how about you?
Oh, yes. My name is Terry Anderson. I'm the president and CEO at Tenant Property Protection and also chairman of the board at Toy Storage Nation. I'm very happy to be here with all of you. I feel like, the least knowledgeable definitely in this group of experts, but I do enjoy the industry. I've been involved with self-storage for the past 7 years. I do have a background in insurance with property and casualty. Started back in the day with Metropolitan Life. A lot of people don't know that, but it's a great to be a part of the storage industry, working with our protection product, as well as we have developed the first of its kind RV gap. Basically, it's a storage for facilities that have RV storage. And we also have other product lines that we work with the general PNC. But it's good to be here.
Thanks, Terry. And Amy, how about you?
Sure. My name's Amy Bix, and I am the director of sales for Toy Storage Nation. To give you a little bit of background for myself, I come from about 20 plus years of B2B media experience. And so I'm taking that and applying it to this niche of the industry or segment of the market, which is executive level Class A boat and RV storage. And what you can think of Toy Storage Nation, we really want to be an independent voice for the boat and RV storage market industry. We want to be there to help folks who are getting into the market, who have been in the market, just a go-to resource, a website with lots of great content all the time. And we do workshops that are full day events that give you the A to Z on what you need to know to get into the market. And we're very fortunate to have industry veterans who are part of our board, giving insight and direction. So that's where I come from.
That's great. Well, I'm going to get started right away. And Greg, I wanted to start with you, especially you're talking about the different kind of data points that you're touching on. What criteria do you think investors should consider during site selection?
So it's important to keep in mind that self-storage, specifically boat and RV storage, is not an industrial class property, that this is still a retail play. And we need to keep in mind that our drive-by traffic needs to be substantial, as well as the amount of land that you're acquiring. In traditional storage, you're looking at a lot less, 5 acres or less. In boat and RV storage, we have sites that go on up to 32 acres. And so acquiring land that still has good drive-by traffic and yet has that much square footage available is not something that a lot of traditional self-storage developers are used to. And so it's important to keep in mind the per capita income as well. We are targeting a higher per capita income individual with boat and RV storage than you are with traditional storage. And so the per capita income is important. And then finally is the population numbers. Although in boat and RV storage, we do succeed in areas that aren't right metropolitan or urban areas, we can still succeed on the fringe, but it's important to have those population numbers at least in an area that the bank is willing to take a risk on that development. So just to recap, it's drive-by traffic, it's per capita income, as well as population. Those are the three things that I factor in heavily when looking at site selection.
So, and then what mile radius are you looking at for that? I mean, in traditional storage, we always looked at a 3 mile, maybe a 5. What do you think for?
So boat and RV storage is unique in that you can collect tenants from multiple states. Here in Arizona, where I'm based, a lot of our renters are actually from northern states. We call them snowbirds, but they're up from Canada, they're up from Utah, Idaho. They store their vehicles here, keep them out of the snow. You don't have to winterize them. But when underwriting the project, we go out 7 miles to gather that data in order to substantiate development. And also a lot of this revolves around how the bank is going to underwrite the project. And so we have found that going out 7 miles, the bank is still able to use that data. Going out 10 or 15 miles, they don't feel that that is your direct market. And so we stay closer to about 7 miles as opposed to your traditional 3 in traditional storage.
That's great. Amy, can you add to that at all, or?
You know, I think Greg is really the expert we go to for those.
Thanks, Amy.
Yes, absolutely. The one thing I've learned is really with this market, and this is really why Toy Storage Nation was put together. This is, you know, an expensive undertaking, and you always want to go to the experts. And we get a lot of folks that have come to us that maybe have started projects along the way and have made very expensive mistakes. And now they're getting the resources and the help that they needed, that they wish they would have started from the beginning. So I'm always very careful on certain things, that if I don't know all of it, I will connect you with the right person.
And then Terry, how about you?
Yeah.
Anything to add there?
Sure. I know that Greg's giving you pretty much the standard and the basic. There are some outliers, though, that I know that he knows about, and we've been seeing, especially in densely populated areas. That mileage can be further out. It's interesting. We had an individual that was in Seattle, Washington, that had people flying in from the East Coast to get to their RV in Seattle and go to their favorite destination. So destinations play into this also. And last I like to say too is that in site selection, there is a variety that's coming out, but what we're seeing is the executive Class A level is very important, because this clientele that are coming in, they're coming in to build a community, as well as I think they are taking care of that very important asset. I just got to see pictures, and I'm anxious to eventually go to the site. Allison, there was a $2 million RV that was sitting in one of the locations that we have. And of course, I was getting very excited about the idea of insuring that baby. But anyway, that's another story. The thing about it is that there's some interesting outliers we're seeing in this industry. And one other thing is we have kind of crossed over a little bit into the camping and the resort and park area. We had some individuals actually to attend our Toy Storage Nation workshops that are seeing a drop in those parks and those campgrounds, resorts at certain times. And corollary, there's in a corollary type way, they're seeing the storage grow. And so now they want to kind of mix in with us a little bit on this process. So Greg and Amy both, we know that this is a tremendous field, tremendous opportunity with over 25 million boats and RVs out there right now and growing. It's a huge opportunity.
You know, Allison, I apologize. I do want to add something after saying I didn't have anything to add.
Yeah, good. Keep it going.
Keep in mind, I think, you know, in the past, it used to be thought that this was more of the Sunbelt area. You know, there were certain specific regions of the U.S. It's really all over. And you want to think about another thing that's really driving this. When people are going out and buying these expensive toys, one thing they don't think about is, where am I going to put it? And HOAs are not allowing boat and RVs to be, you know, parked at homes. And so that's really driving a lot of this, as folks are wanting to get out and buy these toys to play. They don't have anywhere to put them. And so, you know, we're not seeing certain areas of the US kind of lumped out of this like you may have in the past.
And Greg could probably speak to this about the planning and zoning in cities, because he is up against that and realizing that they're getting them off the streets. Isn't that correct, Greg?
Yeah, Terry and I know that well. We've been in the trenches together on that, but presenting a site that has an aesthetic appeal helps with these planning and zoning commissions get it through. The notion of a boat and RV storage facility being a chain link fence with razor wire and guard dogs simply is not the reality of what's being developed now. And so presenting a good step forward in saying that this is a block enclosure or a steel enclosed facility with aesthetic appeal in order to take care of these assets is really the position that we like to take with these cities, and show pictures and show examples of other projects that we've developed in order to get these things through the planning commission. Because again, they don't love the fact that we have 30 acres and 2 employees with a low tax base for that city. So you're playing the game of getting the development together through an aesthetic positioning, but also providing a service to the market that Amy touched on, and that is that the HOAs flat out will not allow them in their communities. And if the city doesn't want these parked on the street, which is going to increase potential for break-ins and crime, we need to put them in a place that we can control them and take care of them a little bit better. And with the help of the RV gap coverage that Terry offers, we're able to provide that service to individuals wherever they may be, whether it be in sunny climates or snowy climates, which we're finding is becoming a lot more valuable, is putting these up in Utah and Illinois, places where they just don't want their boat and RV getting destroyed by the elements throughout the year.
Exactly.
That has to also translate, I'm assuming then, like the curb appeal to, not just at the approval level, but also your tenant level. I mean, if I'm storing a $2 million toy, okay, a lot to take in there. It's not going to go just anywhere. So I guess I'm also like, Terry, you had talked about, the classification of a facility. Can you kind of talk me through what constitutes class A, B, C, D, and then in terms of like upgrading your facility, how does that impact NOI?
Oh, sure. The 4 Ds in the storage world is changing. There's a 5th D, and that's the D that talks about RVs and boats. And I call it delight. Because it is a delight to have an RV and boat facility. You're not dealing with people who are always avoiding, dealing with things like death or divorce or departure or declutter. So it's a better play there. But when they come looking, as Greg mentioned, the old days of chain link fence, razor wire, dirt lots, these things are moving out into the past, because some of the things that come with an RV include areas of where do I find a dump station? How can I replenish my RV? How can I care for my RV? How can I make sure that when that RV goes into that location, not only can I care for it, but I need a trip charge. I need something that will really help keep the battery alive and keep the tires. And we're looking at not just open lots either. We're looking at canopies. We're looking at enclosed. And so that level of service to be a Class A involves a secure gate, a keypad, concrete, asphalt. It involves all these ideas of amenities as well as ancillary services that may come into play. We have some locations out there that are so big they offer concierge services, from anything from detailing to parking and having it ready. In fact, inside of the offices now, there's a little mini retail store that's being set up to have not only the chocks and the oil pans, not only the RV gap coverage and protection, but they also offer toilet paper or other types of items that would help. Greg and his group has developed a solar energy based trip charge that helps keep the battery going, and it doesn't depend upon electricity. So we're seeing a whole new world there, and it goes back to the idea that this is a very strong family community type oriented type product and service, and they like to have a little park there that the kids can stay off the roadways, the doggies can stay in that little playground and that little doggy park. And so it's not the regular, so that Class A is taking on a whole new level. If you go to Class B, Class C, in this world, Everything is metal. Everything that seems like is involving that more so in the Class A level, except for some walls. I know that some people are going to the mortar, the concrete, the brick, the walls, the designs that are there. And then, you don't see much wood, I don't believe, in RV and boat storage facilities. So it's mainly, I would say there's an A-B play that we have here. The C would be back to the chain link fence, the razor wire, and the dirt. We kind of have a tight little asset class that's being developed here. And the focus of about 3,000 dedicated RV and boat storage facilities, it's growing in its the way that the appearance, and they draw the clients and the market out there. But that's what I'm seeing from that standpoint of those kind of three thoughts in there, from that A level to having all those amenities and assets to a B. You kind of downgrade some of those things. You don't have as much enclosed. You may not have some of the amenities and its ancillary services. C is kind of, it's the old way of looking at parking.
Allison,
Yeah.
sorry, to expand on that just slightly, convenience is what's going to drive your rental rates. If you have to put yourself in the position of the RV user, they're coming back from a week inside this small box with kids, dogs, wives, and dirty clothes, and just drive it on the road. If they can return that vehicle, which is their vehicle for memory making, and dump their waste, they can clean the RV, they can get all of their fluids and all of their air filled back up on site, it makes the return and the departure a lot more pleasant of a prospect. And that justifies the higher rates as you start to operate these and maximize revenue long term. So the Class A that Terry is talking about it's providing conveniences that are specific to RVs that allow for the justification of the higher rates.
Just the valet alone, I know for me, I wouldn't want to park one of those, but then also as a facility owner, and then as someone who insures these facilities, I'm sure having a valet service as someone who's familiar with the property, familiar with the terms, and Amy, I definitely want to touch on this with you, but that is a great service for a lot of reasons. Amy, can you add a little bit to that too as well?
Yeah, sure. So for Toy Storage Nation overall, we've kind of simplified, I guess you could say, and defined, kind of put a stake in the ground. And I know that, Terry and Greg and everybody, we talk about this a lot and really kind of want to make this, not just with the Toy Storage Nation being known for serving this market, but also we talk about Class A and what does that mean? And we say four things. Amenities, couldn't be more on point, Terry. That's just expected, right? You're dealing with a different level of service needed, clientele and whatnot, but it needs to be gated, fenced, covered in some way, whether that's enclosed or canopy, and it needs to be paved. And so those are the four kind of pillars. And then below that, an A+ is including technology, something like a Noki. So that's kind of our base. And of course, the amenities and services. And then a B would be once you're not paved. So that brings you there. And then a C is like what Terry was saying, the old days, and we say this, the old days of having your RVs stored on the back lot of maybe your traditional storage are done. You really need to have this different level of service, amenities, protection, and security is big, and convenience, because others are going to be providing it out there. If you're not doing it, someone down the street will.
So can you also talk a little bit about developing a boat and RV facility? I think that people have been a little weary about developing traditional storage fairly recently, just oversupplied markets and then also cost construction. It just doesn't seem like that's translating to boat and RV. So can you kind of talk through that a little bit as well?
I'm going to talk on a broader sense, and then I'm going to turn it over to the experts here for Greg. And I know Terry and I personally, on some level, have experience too with some family facilities. But that being said, the demand is there. Here's the reality. And a lot of folks say, hey, was this just spurned by the pandemic and is it going away? Did people go out and buy more boats and RVs during that time? Well, yes. but it's one of those things where it was already trending. You're looking at the baby boomer generation. A lot of them are retiring sooner, much more active in lifestyle, and they want freedom to go and play when and where they want. And they had the income to be able to do this. Not only were people buying then, but there's a backlog with manufacturers. When we look at data, and you can see it on our website, toystoragenation.com, we're always posting things about RV manufacturers. It was earlier in the year, one manufacturer alone had a $17 billion backlog, not just what's out there that we cannot store, but a backlog of orders. The same in the boat industry. And so the need for it is there, and it's not going away. So that's what's really fueling this, is the demand. And I'll let kind of Greg talk about the ups and downs as far as from the, financing side, development side, but, you cannot deny the need. And that's why so many people are getting involved now. Now's the time to get into this industry, when, exponentially, you can't really find a market that is in need of boats or RV storage. And HOAs, the rules aren't going away, and they're getting tougher.
Yeah.
Agreed. It's interesting in traditional storage, the concept is always build it and they will come. I mean, that's really been our mantra since the late 70s and 80s and 90s, that self-storage has always been underserved in many markets. In boat and RV storage development, what we look at is diversifying our unit mix to allow for any type of tenant to rent with us. So what that means is we have enclosed boat and RV, covered boat and RV, and there's the potential of the outdoor uncovered on pavement boat and RV. But what we do in our development sites is that in our research, 30% of our tenants that store a boat and RV also have a traditional storage unit as well. So although we are focusing on boat and RV, we do have a contingency of traditional storage that meets the needs of these individuals that are storing their boat and RV outdoor under a canopy. And the idea is that you come back after a long trip, you park your RV, and then you take your bikes off the back of the RV and put it in the storage unit, protect them. That also gives a little bit more flexibility when we are experiencing changes in the market. Our enclosed boat and RV storage right now actually suggests that more of them are being used for traditional storage than ever before. The 10 by 10s, 10 by 15s, 10 by 20s, which are in huge development swing right now, a lot of times those aren't large enough. And so we are able to service the contractors and the small businesses that are now working from home but still need warehousing space. So they use the boat and RV storage facility, the enclosed units, as that warehousing space, which on a per square foot basis is less than traditional warehousing space. But on the development front, the larger areas require a lot more dirt work than you're doing in a vertical traditional storage development. And so looking at your cost on above ground retention of water or underground retention of water, that factors into what your lot coverage is. If you're going to get 60% lot coverage out of your area, or you're going to get 75 by doing underground storage of the water, it allows to move that needle on your revenue in order to make the numbers work. So that's kind of what the development landscape looks like, is there's just different factors that go into developing these that you don't traditionally have in self-storage, but the demand is there. We've built quite a few of these recently, and we haven't had any that actually took longer than 12 months to lease up. Mm-hmm. And we're talking, 200,000 rentable square feet of of RV and boat storage. And so the demand is there, absolutely. And your pricing needs to follow that demand. So the idea that traditional storage is always a higher price per square foot than boat and RV, that is being turned on its head right now, because the lack of traditional or lack of boat and RV storage in many markets is allowing that demand to surpass the supply, and therefore the rates follow. And we're getting similar rates on our large 15 by 50 storage units than we are on our 10 by 20s. And that's important for people to understand.
That and just Amy, like what you had said too, just because you saw a spike throughout COVID when we couldn't get out, and the same people who normally would have gone, stay in a hotel on the beach with their family. Now they figured out another way to do this. And it's not the same. I mean, when we were camping, when we were kids, it was because like we were poor college kids and we needed a place to go that was like outside, it was.
Yeah.
And so it's not the same as like dirt under your fingernails. It's a really nice RV in a really scenic, beautiful area on a lake where there's fishing, there's boat. So, I mean, I think it's very easy to kind of like change the perspective, the perception of what camping entails now.
And the other thing to keep in mind that's really simple, but it kind of changes everything, how you think about this. Once a boat or RV is in the market, it needs a place to be stored, right? It's not like maybe grandma's, rugs or whatever. If, a time comes when you might get rid of those and remove them from a storage, and now that storage unit's open. Once a boat or RV is out on the market, even if someone sells it, the next person has to store it. Yes. So there's always going to be a need to have that space to put it.
And I want to add one thing, because our family has gotten involved on a project with Greg, and we have found that there are some variables that really can change the game a little bit and change the cost altogether, because when you go to canopy, there's also now the doors open into solar, which is a unique opportunity for RV and boat storage facilities, and allows a little income generation other than just, the leasing. And then you also have the ability to adjust to a market. We're finding that in some markets, covered parking is just fine, but in Phoenix and some of our areas where the weather really beats up that really nice RV, enclosed or semi-enclosed, we've seen some of those out there, like 3 sides that they're very unique. And but there's a difference too, I think, in cost overall. And Greg can speak to this a little bit more on the square footage. There's a lot less cost with greater upside of rental now because of the demand. But still is always play a factor in both industries, which has always been a challenge as we've seen inflation and the growth of that. But there's other parts and pieces to it that allow you to be a little more flexible with that space. It's interesting too. I've noticed that in more and more discussions by management groups and those experts out there in building and developing your RV, they're now saying, hey, if you got additional land, now's the time to start getting it ready around your mini storage or your secured units. And so that square foot play is a little bit different play in RV because you can have certain returns that you bring back in some other ways that might not be and you don't have the same advantage, I think, in the secure door. Greg, make them speak more to that.
I mean, of the 40 million RVs that are currently in the United States, 38% of those are owned by millennials. And over the 2015 to 2018 timeframe, ownership of these boat and RVs increased by 3% in that millennial demographic. And so younger crowds are buying these and living in these and vacationing in these instead of doing the international travel like we used to do. But as far as what Terry's talking about on the development side, your numbers are not going to translate from traditional storage to boat and RV because you're not building the same type. We're not going vertical. You're not stacking RVs in a 4-story building. And a lot of your development and infrastructure is going to be exposed to the elements under these canopies. And so therefore wood just is not a viable option. So steel structures, which allow us to span further, we can build structures out of steel, and it allows for that to last longer than the old wood frame or stick frame traditional storage units. And there's less to go wrong, right? In a canopy, there's no door. There's no walls that are going to be ran into. You have a roof and that's about it. So it's a different process altogether.
And we've talked a little bit about the expectations from the tenant base as opposed to traditional storage. Is there anything else we should know? Like, do they stay a little bit longer? I think about how they can spend more, but also as supply does kind of catch up with demand and those two start to kind of level off, price increases that are maybe too aggressive. I mean, instead of moving a unit, they can just drive their unit right off the lot. So what's the sweet spot there?
So that's a concern that's been brought up a few times, is that their items are more mobile than it is in a traditional storage. However, we go back to the supply and demand. That individual is going to store that vehicle year round and only use it 5 days a year. And so if the perception is that you're going to be able to walk onto a lot and be able to gauge occupancy in order to analyze a market, it's just not factual. We do feasibility studies and we also manage. And so we have the data of tenants that will store their RV year round, and they may use it for 3 weeks a year combined. During those 3 weeks, they don't move out of their storage RV unit, they keep it, but it shows vacant. And so they're paying for space that they're not currently parking that vehicle on. And so in order to understand the market on building, it's important to know that just because a site is empty, it doesn't mean that they have zero occupancy. When that vehicle is being used, it's not on the site. But traditionally speaking, there is such little supply of boat and RV storage out there, especially Class A, like we're talking about, that it's not easy to get up and walk or drive their vehicle to another site. There isn't another option. And so they stick around year round. Even if they're using it for a month, they're going to maintain their occupancy in that unit because they're not going to find one otherwise.
Yeah.
From an
Yeah.
operations side, is there a seasonality play here? So I'm in Michigan. We pretty much, I don't have a boat because I just bring beer to my friends' boats, and that tends to,
Smart.
that gets the invite back, so that's good. But as they store, they're only using their boat maybe 3 months of the year. They're storing often, but it's on the lake all this time. So is there a play here to say, it is a year lease, as opposed to traditional month-to-month storage facilities?
Find that they will stay year round because when they come back after using it all summer, they're not actually going to find a spot in order to rent. So if they're able to get a spot at a storage facility, especially the unit type that they want, whether it be enclosed or covered, they're going to maintain paying rent on that unit, even in the months that they're using it, because they know that by the time they come back and want to put the vehicle back, that unit's not going to be available. And so there is a seasonality approach that we get more inquiries in the fall, but on the sites that we manage from Florida to California, typically we have a waiting list all year long in order for these additional units. And so they're going to maintain their rent throughout the months that they're not physically at the site.
I think there's one other stat that's come out, and everybody has stats, there are varieties out there and perspectives on this, but the individual tenants that are staying in these places, if they do travel, some say, 314 days, some say 5 days. I've seen a variety out there of how often that vehicle is out of that storage facility. But the idea is they don't want to give up that space because as you down the road, you just can't always find that space. But there's also another factor in here, and that is when they find the type of services that meet the needs of what they have, and you're always trying to improve that, they're going to stay. And we found that they'll stay through rate ups, lease increases if needed. And one individual I was talking to that has an RV talked about the fact that they do not want to leave this location because the proximity to their house or the proximity on the way to their destination. And so they like that comfort, that ease that Amy talked about, and that is very important there. And one of the other things about longevity in these type of situations, there is, I think, a community aspect that we've mentioned before, but I think needs to be mentioned again. And that is, we've seen people that come together in groups into these locations that like it, as well as Greg gave a flip side on the commercial side. You're seeing some of these commercial vehicles that are coming in here. In fact, we have one RV owner or facility owner that has Amazon now parking in his RV and boat storage facility because how nice and how secure it is. And so we're kind of seeing a different play out there. And as these vehicles are changing, the electric vehicles are coming into play and some of these other driverless vehicles. And it's just a play of a lot of change in the industry and in transportation going on right now. It seems to me that RV location, that RV storage location is becoming a bigger play. We've had ride share, coming out big. Now we're hearing more RV share, boat share. It's just a whole nother world that's opened up in this industry, and people are noting that the place that could be the central location for all this to happen can be in an RV and boat storage facility.
So, and Amy, I think this goes back to the importance of some of those amenities. So I'm in Detroit, and with coming off the chip shortage, there were, where the Palace used to be, that whole lot was filled with cars that weren't drivable because there were no chips. And thinking that they could probably use them at a later point, they never could, because rats actually got to the wiring. And now so like, I think the importance of, like you said, those enclosures, the security. So can you add to that a little bit, Amy?
Yeah, so, and I'll kind of bring it full circle back to what we've just been talking about. So, this is a demographic that they bought these expensive boats, RVs, toys, whatnot. They're wanting convenience, safety, and protection, and the amenity and all the comforts that come with that. The kicker with it too, they can afford it. And so you're not going to be chasing folks for their payments. Obviously, they can afford these expensive toys. They are going to pay more for the ease, the comfort, the conveniences, and not think about it. And so you have a happy customer that's happy to come to your facility, and you're not having to ever get into, issues. I don't think I've heard one yet. And we have another board member, Bob Hayworth, who's been in the boat and RV industry for many, many years with Baja Construction, but he talks about that often, that, you're not going to have trouble getting folks to pay. A lot of them just write their check off for the year.
And I would add one other thing, is that we're not just seeing the RV. There's multiple toys that are going into these facilities. And it's not just RVs and boats. We're talking about trailered jet skis and, the quads and the razors. And I know, like Greg, he has about 5,000 or 10,000 different vehicles in his lots. And he could probably lend himself to how that is playing out too, because there is this idea of having your sport, having your activity, having your release, going out, with the family on the boat, or pontoon boats or whatever. We got people who are, I just saw one where his is all full and enclosed of everything bikes and motorcycles. And so you got a whole different play in this arena than others.
It's interesting because on a boat, you may have 3 owners. And so therefore you have 3 guarantors on that monthly rent. Right. And the other thing is that if you have a sand car to go to the dunes or to go out in the mountains, you want to store that sand car next to all of your friends at the same storage facility, because it's convenient to meet there and caravan together, or at least you go there and hang out. So we're developing sites with actually a reception area inside the office for these individuals to meet and hang out and drink their coffee inside the office, and then go out and look at their vehicles. And it's really kind of a congregating area, unlike traditional storage. They're happy when they come to our lots. They're not unhappy, right? They're not unhappy that they have to see their wife's Christmas decorations or the husband's golf club sitting in that unit. They're happy because this depreciating asset in their mind is their money maker, or their memory maker for their family for multiple generations. And so it's a different feel on the lot, and they do not want to go delinquent on that memory making machine that they're storing at the site.
Kind of from off the cuff, so I apologize because they didn't, there's no preparation for this whatsoever, but do you have any idea what the average length of stay is for a tenant, Greg, for a boat or RV tenant?
We've actually seen tenants that will store for 20 years and they'll never use that vehicle. I mean, we've had jet ski trailers that have been sitting there since 1995 and it hasn't moved, but they're not willing to get rid of it because it was grandpa's or jet ski. And so what we find
very different grandparents.
Yeah. But what we find is that the seasonality that we talked about previously is wiped away by the fact that there isn't enough supply. And so they will store year after year because that vehicle is not going anywhere. And even if they do sell that vehicle or lose that vehicle in bankruptcy or repossession, that vehicle still needs a home. And so whether or not the bank is paying to store that vehicle until they auction it off, or they sell it to a new owner and that owner still has the same issue. They've still got to put it somewhere. And so that unit may change hands, but it actually maintains the occupancy of that same vehicle. So we're seeing significantly longer stays because it's actually converse to what you said earlier. Just because it can roll off the lot a lot easier than a box of Christmas decorations, they have nowhere to put it. And so it maintains its home there at our locations. As long as we have the right amenities that they can't get anywhere else, there's never a reason to move that vehicle from that facility.
And I will add one other thing. We are now seeing also well over 1 million people are living full-time in RVs and these variety of sprint vans and different things like that. And I don't know the exact number now. I've seen different stats, but it's grown. And they are leaving behind maybe an extra vehicle, or they're leaving behind things that they need to put in a mini storage or an enclosed area. And they like to have it all in one location. They don't want to go to 4 or 5 different locations. So I know in Greg's mix, he has not only an RV and boat storage, but he has some mini storage closets and things like that for them to put jet ski equipment or extra things like that. And so they're going to stay there because, as you know, we're talking about the convenience. It's really important to these individuals to be able to make those memories or to do their travel.
But that's really that's great stuff. So I'm processing it as I go too. I did have one final question before we start to wrap, but and I want to start with you, Terry. It's sort of it's about ensuring at the facility level, but I'm just kind of what you said, Amy, that these are people that can afford it and these are very expensive assets. So it doesn't seem like a tough sell to improve NOI with tenant insurance.
Yeah, and I'm gonna back up one more step on you, and that's to the general PNC side too, because one of the greatest challenges that you have with these will be 2 things. One, inexperienced drivers. They will knock your buildings around and your gates and your keypads, and you know, you mentioned that before. It is a problem, and we're seeing that happen. And so your general PNC is going to be tapped if you own that, and you're not careful about how wide you build your aisleways, how you figure out your turns. I mean, those are some of the things that come into play. You have to think and plan through, and that's why having somebody like Greg's company come in and do a really good site plan makes a big difference. Also fires. That is a big play that's coming now, and it's because of batteries, things that are left. You're seeing more and more, and you have to make sure that people are very cognizant about how they store and what kind of materials are being left behind and how these things are being handled. And so, you know, we want to be very careful from a general PNC side that, you know, when you have $500,000 of liability sitting in one space, that you make sure all the steps are taken to inventory and to make sure that those things are put in place in such a way that you know what you've got there at the end of the day. And so it's not just, hey, go park, you know, and you're done. You need to have eyes on it. I really believe you need to have boots on the ground that really do the check in, check out of a lot of this process. But also from a protection standpoint, we're seeing, you know, that it's very important to know that a lot of these vehicle owners, because they are staying so long on that facility lot, they can downgrade their vehicle coverage. And in some of these circumstances, they'll go all the way down to where it's only liability. And so therefore, if they do something to their own vehicle, there's no comprehensive or collision coverage. And so they might look for people to blame. And so we've kind of entered into that phase now of, okay, let's be sure that you understand that when you take this space, your responsibility is coming in and out properly, making sure you're storing goods correctly. And by the way, we do have a program that can protect you when you do that, that will watch you when you come in that gate. It'll protect against dings and bangs and accidents and scrapes replaced, the mirrors being knocked off. At the end of the day, if it does within $1,500 damage or within $2,500 or $5,000, which was our 3 plan levels, then basically you're good to go and you don't have to ding your regular vehicle insurance coverage. Or you can do the downgrade or raise your deductible. It becomes a deductible reimbursement. And so we have an owner that will remain nameless that has a number of catalytic converters that was stolen off of one of his locations. And it's a challenge when you have that kind of circumstance happen. And we do cover those types of things. We do have a stop loss level because we're looking at replacement, not on over the counter, regular retail price. We do look at it from a standpoint of aftermarket and things. But the bottom line is that we have to have a product that covers those things. And then you have content. Stop and think about the TVs inside of those RVs and the other things that sometimes get stored in there. I know people that have left behind computers. They have a generator. They have these tanks that are associated with it. And so we do a content coverage both on the facility and off of the facility grounds. And there are certain levels that you go to as long as you have a police report, which we also reimburse for police reports. They're charging for that nowadays. It's hard to get a police report, by the way, a lot harder than it used to be. And crime is up in some areas. So you have to think about protection that is more a supplemental for those RVs because they're very valuable. Just like having Aflac, we have RV coverage protection plan that gives you a supplemental barrier between the gap between what the facility can provide and what that individual has in their vehicle coverage.
Amy, can you add any color to that? I mean, because you guys have all the good security stuff and everything there too, so.
Right. With regards to the insurance, the best thing I can say about what Toy Storage Nation does is we really provide you the resources of the experts in each particular area. And, Terry is the guy to go to. I can't endorse anybody more than that with regards to the RV gap coverage and the need. And like he's saying, you're dealing with these very expensive toys, and you have people that might not be experienced that are moving them around. It's a nice service or additional product to be able to offer to folks that are at your facility for sure.
We call it we're beginning to call it more and more RV park and protect because, the idea of parking and protecting is very important. But I have been hearing about this AI development of these little robots. And I believe that Greg Ellsworth will be one of the first to have little mini robots going around his locations to protect his vehicles and cover his tenants. Is that right, Greg? Is that what I'm hearing?
You know what, actually, Harry, I haven't told anybody, but they have a GoPro camera that actually does a 360 view that goes on the top of a hat. And we're having to walk through the sites and record those 360 views of the vehicle. So it's funny that you say that because we haven't told anybody we're doing that.
Yeah, I know that guy right there. He has security. He has more gadgets and toys than a man should have. I just want you to know.
Do not tell my wife about this interview. But Allison, it's important to note the other thing in boat and RV storage is that you're actually asking and inviting these individuals to come onto your lot with potentially 100 gallons of fuel and store it. And in traditional storage, our rental agreements actually exclude any type of flammable substance to be stored on site. And so making sure that you have the right coverage in place so that when that 100 gallons of fuel catches on fire or leaks and causes an environmental issue, you have the right protections in place. The other thing that I'd like to just add to Terry's is the right P&C coverage is important because as we develop these from an architectural and development standpoint, we try to minimize our costs. Mm-hmm. And one of the ways that we try to minimize costs is that we break up our canopies into 5,000 square foot sections of canopy. They might be right next to each other, but they're 5,000 square feet each canopy. And they might total 50,000 square foot canopy. But the purpose of that is that the 5,000 square foot is the maximum amount of roof, continuous roof you can build without actually putting sprinklers underneath those canopies. Right. So we remove the cost of the sprinklers, the fire line, the backflow testing that goes on every year by breaking these canopies up into a patchwork But the important part is that if we have a loss on the site and it burns down 50 units or burns down our canopies, we may resubmit the architectural plans to the city with that same design of this patchwork of 5,000 square foot canopies. But that may have changed. And now the minimum is 200 square feet, you have to sprinkler it. And so now your insurance covers you for the canopy, but it doesn't include the sprinklers because it wasn't there previously.
Yeah.
And so talking to somebody that understands how to insure these is extremely important, because you want the coverage in your policy to cover any jurisdictional changes in how these are designed and protected from a life safety standpoint, so that the insurance pays for the sprinklers and you're not having to come out of pocket to put in sprinklers or fire hydrants or whatever the jurisdictional changes are on the code,
Right.
or how you build these.
Yeah.
It's very helpful. No, just before we close out, did you guys have anything else that you wanted to add? Amy, anything else?
Sure. I think today, just in the few topics that we did cover, it goes to show how much goes into a boat and RV facility, right? Whether you've been in the market and there hasn't been a resource for you before, and that's why this was created, because there wasn't a resource for this market specifically, or you're looking to get into the market. You know, there's so many different aspects, whether you're talking financing, feasibility, construction, you know, software, the gamut. And really that's what, you know, this group has come together wanting to provide to the market through workshops, websites, and whatnot. There's just so many pieces of it. The other thing that we're seeing is that 70% about of what we're seeing come to workshops and engagement have never had any experience even in the traditional storage market. They're completely new and really seeing this as its own entity, market, and whatnot. So it's a whole new group of people coming into this, you know, this industry that have never had any outside, you know, previous storage experience.
You're absolutely right. Just when you guys are just talking through some of the insurance considerations, I was like, okay, I have a headache now. There's so much to think about.
Yeah.
And so really go to the people who know.
To be connecting with the right people who are experienced in their different areas that can walk you along. And that's really to provide is a place to either come and get information that's needed, that's just right at our website, or at the events that we have. It's not only great information and content and speakers, but it's the time to connect that we quickly found out when we started these workshops that became very, very important. We have a number of breaks throughout the day where attendees are seeking out Greg and Terry, and they'll both tell you they get a group around them. And it's the folks that are getting into this industry, they are needing their hands held. They're needing a lot of help along the way, and they're very grateful for the help and this assistance and guidance. So we're very lucky and fortunate for folks like Terry and Greg that are happy to, you know, share their information and help folks that are in the market and looking to get into the market.
Yeah, and I'd add, Allison, that there are topics that we didn't even scratch. I mean, you talk about feasibility studies that are involved with this. You talk about the funding side. We have experts that come give us the legal side. We have discuss about your leases and in the legal aspects, not just insurance, but you also have other ancillary services and the lighting packages and different things like that that get discussed during that day. And what I think is also very key, I'm teeing Greg up just so he knows, is that you're building these things with managing it in mind. And a lot of times folks just think, I'll build it and put it out there and that's it. No, there's a lot more that happens after it is completed. And you have to have a whole marketing, management, operational concepts in place. And you get that when you come to Toy Storage Nation also. Okay, Greg.
You know, you have to understand that when building boat and RV storage, it is not your traditional self-storage. And so hiring the old professionals that know traditional storage, it's not going to translate directly to the boat and RV storage industry. And so the way that we develop properties from design, feasibility study and construction is we look at it from the end user, which is the operations. And we're able to decrease our expense, decrease our cost in development by looking at it from the end point and building around that. And so we start as early as the feasibility study by gathering the data on the unit demand in that market. Then we draw our site plan and make sure that we can fit on the parcel what we want. Once we have the site plan, then we build our financial projections on that site plan and then go into the architectural design, which nobody's really doing, but that's because it's very important in traditional, in boat and RV storage to understand turning radiuses, understand where sprinklers are going, because it's a longer run. I mean, on 10 acres, it's a lot more pipe to put in than on a 2-acre, 5-story building. And so it's important to know your professionals have done boat and RV storage before in order to save you the pitfalls that we've all paid the hard way in years past.
On that note, I would like it if you guys wouldn't mind sharing your contact information just for anybody who really could use your help. Greg, can we start with you?
Absolutely. I first of all, I appreciate your time, Allison. I think
Thank you.
And it's been great to get to know you and spend some time with you. So my contact information you can easily get at sscg1.com. Stands for Self Storage Consulting Group. And of course, we're number one, right? So number1.com. But on there, you can get a hold of us for our various services, from feasibility studies to architectural, general contracting, and third-party management. So I appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Greg. Terry, can you share your contact information as well?
You bet. It's not BR5409 either. It is a little bit longer than usual because it involves our branding, which is my first name initial T and my last name Anderson, that's SON, at tenantpropertyprotection.com. And that is my main email that you can reach me. We also have a site now that is rvgapcoverage.com along with tenantpropertyprotection.com. Those two websites are our two main products. But you can reach me for other questions about Toy Storage Nation or anything that you'd like to know. And I also want to just say, Allison, I really appreciate the expansion of what your companies are doing and the direction you're going in. One of the coolest thing I'm reading is this RV Park IQ. I am having fun with that. I think that is so cool, just so you know. So
Thank you. Appreciate it. It's a fun industry. Amy, can you share your information as well?
And I'm going to tail off of what Terry said. Allison, thank you for putting this together. And you and I have talked for your other site, the RV Park IQ, in the past. And, hopefully, and we've talked about Toy Storage Nation and RV Park IQ kind of maybe doing a combined piece and talking about how there's a crossover. So look forward to that coming too. So my contact, it's simply my name, Amy, AMY.BIX at toystoragenation.com. My phone, 602-909-3910 for those of you who don't like to email. And I give my phone number now because I get so many calls from potential attendees who just want to talk about the market. They're so excited that there's someone that can, help them along. So always happy to do that. And then our website, I think, is the most important information I could give out. It's simply toystoragenation.com. All one word. You're going to find lots of great content, information, wherever you're at in the market that's constantly going up, and also information for our upcoming workshops. Our schedule for next year is going to actually start with Las Vegas, April 14th. We're actually, although I said the majority of what we're seeing is coming outside of the storage market, about 70%. We're actually going to be doing our first one in cooperation with ISS. And anybody that isn't familiar with that, that's a large media brand within the self-storage arena. So we're going to be working with them for that. And we will have information for that event up on our website soon. But in the meantime, you can go to our site, go to the events page, give your information, and you'll be put on a list that will be able to start getting you information.
Great. Thank you guys so much. And as they mentioned, RV Park IQ is our new platform. It's actually for buying and selling RV parks and campgrounds. And then we also have market data relevant to that sector as well. My contact information is Allison, ALISON at listselfstorage.com. And my phone number is 248-795-8126. Thank you guys so much for contributing today. And thank you everyone for attending.
Thanks, Allison.
Thank you.
Allison.